We're late. We're sorry. It's not our fault. We're blaming our producer, Stephen Smith. Hi, I'm Steve Lowery, editor of High Low here at the Long Beach Post. And today we have marriage and family therapist, Kathy Remeika, here with us. Hi, Kathy.
Hi, thank you for having me.
You're welcome. We since we were late, we were talking about a lot of things, including the fact about things like chicken porn, but we can get on that later. Let's get right to it, Kathy. Right now, people are at home a lot, and it is causing a lot of issues for individuals, for couples, and for families. And we wanted to talk to you about what you're hearing, what you're observing, and maybe some of the things that you can suggest people do to kind of alleviate some of those issues. So let's jump right in. The one that we hear about the most are couples who are spending a lot more time together than they've had in the past. What kind of issues are you hearing about from couples that they're dealing with all this time together?
Well, actually, that's the perfect end because just a couple of minutes ago, I got a text from one of my colleagues, my intern that works with me, who said that remember this couple that wanted to put off coming in to see me or see us before because of all the stuff that's happening. They literally last night said, we need to start this now or we're going to kill each other. She just finished a session and she's like, yes, they were literally ready to kill each other. People aren't used to being around each other so much. You get to go out, go to work, do your thing, have your kids away, come back. And it's actually a serious topic as well because there are some issues around domestic violence. There's some issues around how do we deal with someone when we're used to having a little bit more space and more time to collect ourselves before coming in and basically hitting all our triggers, right? When we're around our family is when we can really get triggered into some old patterns or old ways of being that can be intense or unhealthy.
Should people be alarmed that given how much time they're together, that I think there's this kind of, I'll call it a myth, that if you have a soulmate, let's say, that you should always want to be around them. That is kind of like, oh, well, if you love someone, of course you always want to be around them. Then people are around each other all the time and find out, I don't like this. Is it a sign that the relationship is bad? Or is it normal that you would want time away even from someone you love very much?
Well, yeah, I think that's where there's pitfalls if we have expectations that the person that you're with mostly is supposed to fulfill all your needs, right? And so you're coming in with these expectations that aren't going to be delivered. And if you think about it, it's unfulfilled expectations that cause upset. So you're going to be upset every day if you expect your partner to make everything better for you.
So if you're in, let's say, 800 square foot apartment with your loved one, you're not getting along, you have expectations. Plus, as you were saying, Kathy, there's some serious stuff going on here. People are losing jobs. People are worried about their health. They're worried about the health of their loved ones. Are there practical things they can do? Can they actually distance themselves, even if they're living in, relatively confined spaces? What can they do to kind of alleviate that and kind of lighten their kind of mental load?
Well, I think the first thing is to not avoid what's happening, right? Because that's what we love to do as humans. We want to avoid pain, run away from pain. So we'll do that by distraction. I can imagine a lot of people are binge watching shows, we're stress eating, we're surfing the web, probably shopping more than we should online. And so what happens then is we're out of touch with what's really happening inside. And so then when you do that and there's all this buildup and then you have your partner there, it's really easy then to explode on them because you're not even aware of what emotions are really there. So I think really the thing is that you are required to do right now is to lean in, not lean out, because you are contained in this environment with them. So you have to recognize what's happening, and then allow it to be there. And then investigate it. There's a good acronym called RAIN, where you can just practice that mindfulness. And RAIN stands for recognizing what's happening, allowing it instead of avoiding the situation. Investigate. So with curiosity, you want to understand what's happening there. And then just with non-identification of what's happening, just be the viewer of that. And if you can pull yourself out of that, then you can probably stop a real conflict from being out of the storm, and see you're normalizing that. Okay, I could see where this can happen in a situation where I'm with someone that I'm not used to being in the space with.
And so you're saying ultimately you should be able to do what's going on from a distance where you're almost not part of that situation.
Yes, while you're in it.
It's hard. And when you said lean in, do you mean go to your loved one and go, look, I hate your guts right now, so let's talk about that, because I'm not comfortable with hating your guts?
Yes, absolutely. That, because we have this tendency to then shut down, right? And then if you're working or you go away, you kind of just blow off your steam somewhere else, right? And then it never gets worked out. But being able to just acknowledge that is enough to create a space where you can normalize and de-escalate that. And to know that you're probably not alone right now. I mean, I can imagine millions of people across, the States right now are saying, I can't be with this family for this long. Help me, right?
Right.
And we joke about it, but we're not joking about it at the same time. It's really a stressful thing. And when you're stressed, and when there's a lot of stress, that's when a lot of your old ways of being that could be dysfunctional or just, you're just it's harder to control those emotions when you're stressed. The anxiety, depression, all that can come out when there's an added layer of stress. So just normalizing that, you're not the only one going through that.
You were mentioning about people being in relationships and all of a sudden maybe saying, oh man, maybe this isn't going to work. If we kind of build that out, people are feeling that a lot about life after once the stay-at-home orders are taken away and we go back out into the world. We've already noticed the conversation is much more as basic as, are we going to be allowed to shake hands anymore? Are we going to feel as comfortable around each other anymore? You can already kind of feel this kind of anxiety building up. What kind of world are we going to end up in after all of this is over? Is it healthy right now to be thinking about that and kind of walking yourself through? Or is that maybe a little unnecessary anxiety that you're piling on yourself?
Well, that's an excellent question.
Hey,
we're in that process of going in, cocooning ourselves is about self-reflection, right? And the amazing thing is when there's a shared feeling or a shared experience, like compassion literally means to suffer together. That's what that's what you're doing, and to be able to have an entire world identify with that is probably what's needed to really make some shifts in humanity in terms of connecting with others. So this is the time to be doing that. During the times of suffering is when we grow the most. And so we've already learned so much about what's important. And so why not take this time? Take this time as an opportunity to reflect on what your own purpose and meaning is, and who you want to be in this.
We're getting some questions, so we want to shout these out to you. Here's question number one. It's interesting. When I was working, I rued the time I didn't have to do my projects here at home. Now that I do have the time, I don't have the desire to do them. What is wrong with me? My small studio is a wreck and I don't care. What can I do? I think this goes to some expectations.
Mhm. Expectations, and isn't the grass always greener on the other side? And the way out of that is probably daily gratitude. Being able to maybe even start the day with one or two things you can be grateful for will help shift that perspective, because that's what we do as humans. We always look for the negative, because that's kind of how we've learned, that's how we survive, is we find things to watch out for. So to overcome that, we need to really dig into what we can be grateful for.
I don't know if it's a particularly human trait or actually an American trait that Americans always seem to be wanting to better themselves. We love self-help, we love Tony Robbins and all this kind of stuff.
Mhm.
So here we are, we're told there's this horrible pandemic, everybody into their place, so you're safe. And the first thing a lot of people are thinking is, oh good, I'll write the book now. Oh good, I'll do the album. Oh good, I'll finally organize my kitchen. And what we're seeing now through social media is a lot of people saying, oh, I thought the reason I didn't do all those things was I was too busy. Now it just turns out I don't want to. And they feel horribly guilty. How do we deal with this kind of self expectation that thinks at every moment of the day we should be getting better, even during a global pandemic?
That's true. It is an American thing, isn't it? That we are trained to be productive. I had a client just recently tell me that, and he's someone that is highly anxious and high performing, that this is the first time he's been able to give himself permission to not have to live in those expectations, and that he slept better over this last week than he has like in the last year. And the identifying thing that I heard from him is to give himself permission to just be and not do. And that's such a hard shift for people, because we're such doers in this culture, that just being able to think about who you want to be in this versus what do I want to do is really a big shift in how to live your life.
You mentioned sleep. Terrific reporter here, Asia Morris, has a piece coming out in a couple hours, actually, about changing sleep patterns.
Mhm.
And some people find themselves sleeping far less, which I would imagine, given the anxiety, is expected. We've also heard from people who say, I'm actually sleeping more than I ever have, and I'm really worried about that. Any idea what's going on there?
Well, I mean, obviously there's more than one reason, but what I've seen as a pattern is exercise has definitely been a change in how, in what we do. We're not as active, or some people are and aren't. But I mean, you need exercise for your mental health as well, right?
Right.
Notice if you're sedentary all day and you're not going out stretching and you're not doing your usual walks, you notice that your emotion could start becoming low, and then it's harder to sleep and you're restless. So it really is important to find ways to stay connected to your body. Um, that's part of like nourishing yourself. There are, people that have more resilience, which is the capacity to recover quickly from, difficult or challenging situations, are people that like use their body as feedback. They're nourishing themselves. They, try to practice skills that they have. And so you want to really just check in with yourself more than you're used to.
We have another question. Do you have any tips for being confined in a small apartment with a child with ADHD, especially with the playgrounds closed?
Well, I can make that a funny tip, which is a glass of wine, but also that is tough. I would say that the majority of moms that I've been in contact with or talked to feel such a pressure to do more, that what they feel they're doing isn't good enough. You know, they think they have to be the perfect teacher now, the perfect homeschooler, plus, a mom 24/7. I mean, fathers as well, but I have a mom group that we talk to, so I know for sure everyone is going crazy in that area. So you're right. A kid with ADHD needs exercise, and they do have videos on. You can get them on YouTube where you can exercise with them. I think that's
Oh,
like
okay.
key. You have to help them burn those calories. You have to help them get that energy out, and that I think is key.
I would think of everyone. It seems to me that during this time, the most challenging thing would be a mom. I have two kids. They're grown now. I was a good dad, but I think I told you the bar is so much lower for dads. If we don't drop our kids down a well, everyone says, "Hey, you're a great dad." Moms are held to such a higher standard when it comes to taking care of kids. And you spoke earlier about expectations. The expectations that they put on themselves can be crushing. How can moms go about the business of being great and taking care of their kids, but also allow themselves not to be perfect?
Well, I think the most important thing to do, and the rest will follow, is just to be present, right? I mean, isn't that what we all want? That's what kids want, to feel like they're being seen, being heard. And so sometimes, again, it's about not having to do things. It's about letting them know you're there and that you're spending this time with them. And then letting go of trying to come up with a list of activities every day, that maybe you just have to pick one thing that, is a good intention for both of you. I think that's probably huge, to be able to let go of this idea that you have to be perfect, like you said, because it's not going to be, and it's not supposed to be.
Now, I bet there are people out there listening right now who said, I wish I had these problems because I'm stuck alone in this place 24 hours a day. If you were to talk to people who are spending enormous times now by themselves, what would you suggest to them as ways to get some kind of contact when, of course, contact is the one thing we're told not to have?
Right. I find it interesting that we've had this debate with technology, right? That whether technology has taken us away from each other, real human connection, and yet the irony is that technology now is being used for connection. This is how we're able to talk to grandparents in New York and Michigan, and bring groups together. And so I really think that it's really important to be able to have those experiences together through the technology right now. What I've found, though, is people that have been alone, there's been a lot of mixed feelings around it. People who are more introverted are really, finding the time enjoyable for themselves, and people who are more extroverted are the ones struggling with how do I do this? And so this is a really good time to understand your personality more. But I think it's really important to be able to pick up the phone or do exactly what we're doing here.
Right.
To stay connected.
There's some people in my life who said up until now, they thought they were an introvert, and they've discovered that they're not, that they really don't like spending this much time alone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So what have they said to you about that? What's been some of their ways they would?
I wanted to ask you about the technology because you're a therapist, and we were talking that, like reporters will always, when someone says, can we do the interview on the phone or do you want to do it in person? We will always, if time permits, want to do it in person because there's all these physical cues that you get from that. I would imagine being a therapist is the same thing. You were mentioning, Kathy, that you're doing a lot of them this way now.
Right.
Is this work perfectly fine, or is there anything that you miss not being in the same room with your clients?
Overall, I would say that it is harder to do it online like this because being in someone's presence and having that energy is really part of the work, right? Being
Mhm.
able to be there. But at the same time, I think that uh, sometimes you have to work with the circumstances you have. And if you can bring the right attitude to it, you can still manifest what you need. And I think that's part of, the work, even in therapy, is how do you take a situation and recognize that it's your attitude around a situation that's more important than the actual situation or circumstance. So I feel like my clients have been really good at making the transition, and staying connected, because that is their work, right? How to shift the perspective, um, to work with what you have. Oh, someone's
Right. Possible effects of long-term social isolation. Do you believe there will be any type of trauma due to the quick changes in society, not being able to get groceries as easily, having to wait in long lines all of a sudden for essentials, sudden fear of infection? Do you think this will be a long-term effect of this?
I do think there's going to be a long-term effect to this, positive and negative. Anything uh, that's life-threatening, which in this case has a is a trauma and has a potential for having some mental stressors like post-traumatic stress disorder, and those are things that are going to need to be processed. And then at the same time, um, the positive things that are coming out of this is really reshaping what's really important for us in our lives. And it really is through times like this that we reevaluate that. So I think that again, there's going to be a shift in balance for what's important. But yeah, I am concerned about the post-traumatic stress that results from this, um, especially because it could, potentially have more spikes in domestic violence,
Mhm.
things like that that come out of unsafe situations where people can't flee.
Right. We have a question. Look, life, as crazy as this situation is, and you and I were talking about the fact we've never obviously lived through something like this,
Mhm.
life does go on. So the question asks, what are your thoughts on big decisions like getting a divorce or selling a house right now? Some people might have been in the process of doing that.
Mhm.
Is it a good idea to stop, or is it important to keep going on with your life?
Sometimes no action is the action, and
Mhm.
what I've seen, I was just speaking to someone this morning about going through the process of divorce, and they're supposed to sell the house but they can't really sell the house. um, is um, that with anything, with change, even things pass. This will pass too.
Right.
And so that's really about the mental stamina of maybe looking at this as more of a marathon than a race. And if you just slow things down, it doesn't mean that you're not going to get there. It just means not in the timeline you thought, which again goes back to expectations, right?
Right.
Um,
Expectations are killers, aren't they?
maybe that's the one lesson to take away from today is to really examine your expectations and recognize that that's where your upset is coming from if you can alter that.
What do you think are healthy expectations now? Is it simply to say, look, man, this is something no one's dealt with, certainly not since 1918, and never really like this? Is it, should people be, I'm not trying to say what people should think, but is it enough to say, look, just get through this? We'll deal with the rest later.
Well, that's what we do in a crisis, right? We look at safety, right? Safety first.
Right.
Looking at protecting yourself physically. It's almost like it's that hierarchy of needs, the triangle. First, you have to have that in check before you can start going into your other wants and desires and self actualization. all that. So yes, actually, just getting through this is enough.
That will be an accomplishment in and of itself. Yeah. We're almost out of time here, but we started late, so we can go a little over. I wanted to ask you about something because it's something I've noticed over my life. You mentioned how normally people grow through hard times. That's where we find our emotional growth and things like that. Kathy, why can't we grow while we're eating hot fudge sundaes? What is it about human beings that the only time we really seem to make any kind of progress is when we have to come through something really horrible? What's it about our brain that it seems to latch on to tough times?
Because we don't like to be uncomfortable. Why would we change something that we're comfortable with?
Okay. Yeah. You answered that very quickly. I thought this was going to go on for hours, and that's it. That's good. No, that's good. That's great. Kathy, thank you very much. We really appreciate you being here. Maybe we'll have you back because I'm sure this is going to go on for a while, and I have no doubt there'll be many more questions going on as we go down the road. Thanks for joining in, everybody. On Monday, we will be speaking to two individuals who's going to talk to us about face masks, how to wear them, how to make them, the proper materials, because now, of course, we got to be wearing them all the time. In fact, I thought the both of us might be wearing them here, but we thought it might freak you out. So anyways, Kathy, thanks again.
Thank you so much.
Have a great weekend, everybody.